hillside, multiple trees are on fire. Spokane, it appears that the tanker truck is fully engulfed.
Make sure the road's closed going eastbound. I can feel the flames all the way on the westbound side.
One person has died after a tanker truck crashed and then exploded on I-90 during morning rush hour.
Tonight we continue to learn new information about the deadly incident that we've been covering all day. The road is fully back open tonight, but an investigation into how this deadly explosion happened continues at this hour. Good evening and thank you for joining us for KREM 2 News at 5. I'm Mark Hanrahan.
And I'm Whitney Ward. The Washington State Patrol is still trying to identify the driver of that tanker truck. KREM 2's Regan Gallo has been out on I-90 all day talking to people about what happened. Regan?
Yeah, well, I want to emphasize that all lanes have finally opened this evening. And right now, I'm right outside the 272 Medical Lake exit, outside this gas station where many truckers were rerouted earlier this morning after the collision because both westbound and eastbound lanes were closed.
Washington State Patrol said at about 8 a.m. this morning, the semi-truck that had both diesel and gasoline tanks on it began rotating and the cab of the truck hit a rock wall. This is dispatch audio between emergency responders from this morning.
Dispatch from 265 command. It is a tanker truck. We're going to need hazmat.
The hillside, multiple trees are on fire.
The truck also hit some guardrails and then moments later the tanks exploded in flames. Then the cab caught fire soon after.
A full vehicle and both tanks then caught fire. There were several explosions. It's unknown if it was speed as a factor or icy roads or maybe even a possible medical problem.
Many people on their morning commutes were stopped and forced to take back roads.
When I took the 264 exit, we were like at a standstill for most of it. So, and then coming into Cheney, I've never seen that much traffic in Cheney.
Another commuter told me it took 2 hours to drop their child off at school. Although WSP does not know the official cause of the collision yet, we do want to note the area of the collision had severe ice warnings up until about 11 a.m. this morning.
And from my phone call with Washington State Patrol, they told me that the next of kin of the truck driver had not been alerted yet, so they were unable to identify the driver's identity. In Spokane, Regan Gallo, KREM 2.
Well, the National Weather Service issued an advisory for that Four Lakes area this morning. It didn't go into effect until after that crash happened, but it was because of the freezing fog and that drizzle.
Yeah, black ice has been a problem for drivers all week long here in the region. And Jeremy, it's that freezing fog that's been stubbornly parked over the inland Northwest all week long. When will it finally move on?
Saturday. Saturday is the day I can most confidently say it will move on. Getting there are some possibilities that we see a break in the action, but it's still coming down. 29 degrees with freezing drizzle. Officially, it's FZDZ in observations, and it basically says it's a mist that freezes to things it touches. A very light coating of a type of freezing rain. I think that is what we contend with moving through the night. Now, when it comes to our visibility, not quite as bad as where we have been in recent days, but that still is going to be a factor with the freezing drizzle and the moisture remaining in the low levels of the atmosphere. Temperatures sit just below freezing across the region and likely stay there overnight. Tomorrow, I think we wake up to a changing atmosphere. I still think we get some of the fog and freezing drizzle, and I think we hang on to that through about the middle of the day, but I also think there's a possibility of seeing a peak of sunshine tomorrow afternoon. Rain moves in Saturday. Rain takes us through the day on Saturday, and it likely starts out as a little bit of a wintry mix in some areas. We'll talk more of that in your full forecast.
Dad, there's an earthquake happening. Look at the pool.
So this was the moment that a very strong earthquake shook Northern California, sparking a tense 45 minutes for people all along the West Coast as tsunami warnings were put into effect. The USGS estimates more than 1.3 million people live close enough to that quake to have felt it.
The USGS says a magnitude 7 earthquake struck off California's northern coast, southwest of Eureka. People as far south as San Francisco, about 260 miles away, felt a rolling motion for several seconds today. Smaller aftershocks followed.
Now, there was also a traffic jam along the coastline as people tried to flee. An emergency alert was sent to phones as that rare tsunami warning went into effect. The notification read, "You are in danger. Get away from coastal waters. Move to high ground or inland now." Experts say the alert went out as a safety precaution.
It turns out that the type of earthquake is what we call a strike-slip earthquake, where the plates move side by side and have less impact on lifting up the water. And so that's less likely, but not impossible, to create a tsunami. And I think what's happened is the tsunami has not been observed. And so they kept the warning up for a little longer, but it became clear and apparent that nothing hazardous had actually happened from the tsunami point of view. It was a strong earthquake with strong shaking. Of course, that's a different issue.
Earthquake experts say even though today's earthquake did not produce a tsunami, if it had a magnitude 7, would probably consist of strong currents and waves no bigger than 3 feet. So far, there are no reports of major damage or any injuries.
Our Environment Northwest team recently dug into the earthquake and tsunami threat in the Northwest, and you can watch our special, When the Earth Shakes.
It is streaming right now on KREM 2 Plus. KREM 2 Plus is free to download on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.
Another big story we are tracking tonight. Take a look. This is the inside of a business that was damaged by flooding after a fire in downtown Spokane last night.
People and businesses are still recovering after that fire at the Coeur d'Alene Plaza apartments forced dozens of people to relocate. We first brought you this story as breaking news at 5 o'clock yesterday.
Tonight, KREM 2's Christian Garza has been talking with those who are impacted by that fire.
I'm here on Howard Street after a kitchen fire at the Coeur d'Alene Plaza apartments right here behind me caused over 60 residents to be displaced, as well as 3 businesses, Petunia and Loomis, Boo Radley's, and O'Doherty's Irish Grill, to close for the foreseeable future due to flooding from the sprinkler system because of that fire. Spokane Fire Department Fire Chief Tom Williams says the fire broke out on the 6th floor of the apartment building, but was contained to 1 unit. However, it still caused more than 60 residents to be displaced. After visiting the Red Cross shelter, displaced residents say they didn't think the situation was serious because the fire alarm goes off fairly regularly. Brianna Chesser, who has lived there for 8 years, even says she ignored the alarm initially and put on her headphones.
Then the fire department came in, kind of yelled at me for doing that.
She says it wasn't until she walked outside of her apartment that she realized how severe the situation was.
The fact that there was smoke billowing through the hallways and stairwell, and that there's a huge puddle at the bottom of the stairwell.
Assistant Fire Chief Williams says no one was hurt in the fire. However, the same thing cannot be said about the businesses that were on the ground floor of the complex.
I found massive amounts of water pouring from the ceiling.
A number of businesses below the apartments, including Boo Radley's and O'Doherty's Irish Grill, were forced to stay closed as they worked to salvage their businesses.
The worst possible time for this to happen. The holidays are our busiest time and a lot of what we rely on for getting us through the slow beginning of the year. And so it was a lot of panic.
Jesse McCauley, the manager for Petunia and Loomis, says the timing of the damage is a major cause for concern. McCauley says the flood adds another layer of stress since it comes less than 2 weeks after the business moved to this new location.
We're kind of riding this high of being in a new space, and for this to happen was very difficult.
Red Cross says their last official count of people using the shelter at All Saints Lutheran Church was around 36, all of whom lived at the Coeur d'Alene Plaza apartments. Red Cross officials say as of right now, those that need help are able to stay at the church, but they are looking for a bigger facility to be able to better help those who can't go home just yet.
We're all praying for each other and staying together, and hope we can all be back in the building as soon as possible.
Assistant Fire Chief Williams with the Spokane Fire Department tells me that investigators are still looking into what caused the fire here at the Coeur d'Alene Plaza apartments. However, it's up to the building's management team as to when residents will be able to come back in. In Spokane, Christian Garza, KREM 2 News.